Ouch, your perch.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out myself.
These chairs are so very comfortable.
Slide down.
Hey everybody, I'm Alex. Thank you for coming to Flyleaf. Your support, your support for our books and our events are what lets us keep having them, and we love to have authors come and talk. So thank you so much. Tonight we have the honor of hearing from Jeremy Whitley about his new graphic novel, The Dog Night, with Ursula Vernon. Great.
I'm not in the graphic novel, I'm just talking to him.
Yes.
Which dog do you play?
Jeremy is a writer of comic books, podcasts, and more, living in Durham, North Carolina. He is the creator of the award-winning series Princeless, several books and comics for Marvel, and over 50 issues of the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic comic book series. Ursula Vernon, aka Take Kingfisher, has written and often illustrated over 15 books for children, at least a dozen novels for adults, an epic webcomic called Digger, and various short stories and other odds and ends. So, thank y'all again. Hope you enjoy. And remember, you can get a copy of The Dog Night or any of Ursula's books up at the front. Thank you.
Well, hello everybody. Thank you for coming out. It is a pleasure to be here to talk to Jeremy about The Dog Night, which is, this book is so cool. I really enjoyed it. So let's tell people what the book is about.
So the book is about a non-binary middle schooler named Frankie, who is a big fan of dogs, but their mother is allergic to dogs, so they're not allowed to have dogs. But they keep having run-ins with this one strange dog that they end up saving from a group of bullies. And in the process, they end up getting knocked out. And when they wake up, they are in a place called the Omniversal Dog House, where they get to meet a group of super dogs known as the Potheon. They're all dogs with special powers that represent the various values that dogs care about. And they get a special helmet that allows them to understand what dogs are saying and see what dogs see. And they are sort of offered the chance to take a series of tests to see if they are worthy to be the Dog Knight. And the Dog Knight, I would say, dogs are man's best friend, and the Dog Knight is dog's best friend.
That is a great summary. It's all of that, only it's also really cute and fun and has peril and humor and all these things. I loved a lot of the sort of dog jokes, like the fact that one of them is a platinum retriever, and
yeah, every dog is sort of, well, most of the dogs have sort of like pun-related names in some way. I think that was like when I was trying to figure out what the dog who's represents the value of smell, who's the best smeller out of everybody. I was like, well, what's better than a gold retriever? I mean, obviously a platinum retriever is better.
Makes total sense. Now, are any of the dogs in the book based on specific dogs that you have known?
I would say the closest thing to that is, oddly, the Yorkshire Terrier, who is, I described as a Yorkie who thinks he's Batman. Is a lot like the Chihuahua that my grandmother had growing up, who was sure that he was the defender of the house and could take anybody down, despite the fact that when attacking me, he would literally fit on my shoe.
Small dogs, yes, I am familiar with the intense enthusiasm and disbelief that they are actually teacup sized. So you are the writer, and we would be remiss if we did not mention Bree Indigo, who did fabulous artwork for this. It's really spectacular. Can you tell us a little bit about what's it like as a writer working with an artist to make a comic?
It is a strange but really cool job, because I get to have ideas, right? And then I write them down, and I'm like, here, make that a thing. Make that make sense. Draw it. And then at some point in the future, I get an email, and it's like, here's that thing that you came up with. And I'm like, yes, that's it. That's definitely the thing that there's no chance I could have ever drawn. Or occasionally, I mean, this amazing thing that you did, it could be a little better. But
it could
mostly,
be slightly more amazing.
yeah, it could be a little more amazing. If you just, did something with the hair, I don't know what it is. But mostly it's a lot of me going, yeah, that's really good. That's a great job. That's definitely what I came up with. And it's really neat because I think like it's such an additive process. I think, there's some people that talk about illustrators and comics like they're holding it back. Like you have to write a thing and just wait for the art to get done. But it's like, it's such a cool process of like, every once in a while, Real email me and be like, hey, would it be cool if I like did this whole thing? I think the scene would make more sense if it was like this, or, I think one of the big things with this book is Bree is themselves non-binary. So like they would have a lot of input on like, what I think would be a cool fashion choice? What reminds me of when I was going through this period as a kid? And I'd be like, yes, go with that. I know what I have learned from other people and what I've, sort of paid attention to. Whereas like Bree, it's like, yeah, I know things that you don't ever really talk about, like about this stuff. And, it's good to have that kind of input. And in this case, it was, invaluable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's empathy and research can only take you so far. So when doing the script, do you like, if say we're looking at, here, I'll just find a page at random, page 12, are you like, okay, break this into thirds, and the top panel is this, and the middle panel is this, and then there's 3 at the bottom? Or are you like, this is the dialogue that needs to happen, and this is where they are?
Usually I have it broken down by panel, and I'll say, panel 1, this is happening. I think the earlier I am in working with an artist, the more description I tend to give, because I don't know what they don't know, and I don't know what extra needs to be communicated. So I'll have a little more description in there, and then I'll say, this is the dialogue for this character says this character says this, there's this sound effect or whatever on the page, and then panel 2, this is the description, this is what's happening in this one, and I'm not precious of things if they want to combine things or break things up a little bit more, but I think as a writer it's valuable to sort of figure out what the beat is for a page, because I think that's the biggest difference between people who don't write comics, who come in to do a comic book, and people who write comics regularly, is like, you don't want a page to end in the middle of a sentence and just sort of carry into the next page. You want every page to feel like, all right, there's the place where I turn. You want to know where you put surprises, where you put reveals, because if you have something that you want to reveal in a novel, it doesn't really matter where it is. People are going to read it in the same order, and they're going to see the words. But in comics, it's like, if you flip that page and on the right-hand side, there's a big reveal of something, people are going to see that before they even read the left-hand page.
Yeah.
So having that, having that reveal be on the back of the page where you're like, whoa, is one of those little tricks that comic book writers know and comic book artists understand, but somebody coming in from the outside wouldn't necessarily even think of.
I would always occasionally run into the problem with you have to sit down a writer and say, I can't fit that many words onto a page. The speech bubbles will be this big and their heads will be this big down at the bottom if they have to say all that. But then people learn. So I guess that segues into the next question. What do you enjoy about writing comics? Why do you like to do comics as opposed to, anything else?
I enjoy writing all sorts of things. I think comics in particular is fun because it's like a team sport. It's like, it's something that you get to work with a whole team of people who are like really good at what they do. And, in novels, it's like maybe you and an editor, maybe two editors if you're lucky, just sort of like working on a thing. But in comics, it's like you've got me writing, you've got at least one editor, maybe two, you've got, a penciler, maybe an inker, maybe a colorist, maybe a letterer. In our case, it's just Bree and Melissa. But still, it's like everybody's sort of working together towards the same goal, trying to make the best version of the thing, in a way that, like, when you're doing your own thing, you don't have as much input from the outside. You don't have people to say, well, this doesn't quite make sense, or what if we did it this way? It would, work much better and much smoother. And I think it's nice to sort of have that team of people, like, that can all sort of, at the end of the day, look at the comic and be like, wow, we did this. As compared to, at the end of the day, when you write a novel, it's like, all right, I guess that's done. Let's send it to the editor and see what happens.
Yes, I know that feeling. There is also a tendency, since it is you and an editor, that you do basically sit alone in a room for 4 months and get increasingly weird, and people shove food under the door and ask me how I know. Well, that's now you have done other comics, though. This is certainly not your first. Was there anything particularly different about working on this one compared to Princeless or the My Little Pony ones? Anything that stood out as different challenge or cool or?
I think some of the differences I think are early on. My Little Pony or Marvel or things like that are very like, we already know what those characters look like. We already know what those characters' voices are like. The trick is to make them look and sound like they should and tell a story that's different than what's already out there. Whereas like with Dog Night or Princeless, which is mine as well, it's like you're building the whole thing from the bottom up. So like you have to figure out what the world is like, where it's at, how it is, when it's happening, what these characters sound like, what they look like, make sure you have the right mix of stuff in there, which is a very different process. I think this one was the first, like, since Princeless, where it was like a big creator-owned project. It's like Princeless was my first comic, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't realize it at the time. And we got nominated for awards and won awards, and I don't know how that happened, because I can say very clearly that I had no idea what I was doing.
There's a lot to be said for not knowing what mistakes you're supposed to make, though. So
yeah. Looking back at those scripts now, it's like it's difficult to read, just because I'm like, my formatting is bad. I don't know how anybody knew what to put where. There's much too much dialogue in here. That must be why the word balloons are all over the place. But yeah, this was like, I knew what we were aiming for, and we also have a lot of like internal monologue with Frankie in the story that is sort of crunched in there in the story. But I think it was the first case where like I've known, like, all right, this is the story, this is the dialogue, and then we have like this extra benefit of like being inside Frankie's head. So like you don't need to repeat what's on the panel. People already see that, but it gives you sort of that extra glimpse of how they're seeing it, what they're doing, which is a really cool thing to be able to do, because you really get a feel for like who that character is.
And for why dogs? Why not? I mean, I love dogs. This is not a criticism, but why not the cat knight or the armadillo knight or the frog knight?
I think part of it is, Frankie is sort of dealing with trying to figure out where they fit into things, and has had some issues with bullying, and has lost a friend who they really cared about. And I think one of the great things about dogs, and this is sort of like telling of me as a dog person, is like dogs don't want you to be a different person than who you are. They're very cool with what you're doing and who you are. And they just want you to love them. They want you to care about them. They just want you to go play ball with them. They don't have a lot of other expectations. And I think having that in there, was, I think, a good place for Frankie's journey forward in this story. Whereas, cats, very judgment-heavy cats, they have a lot of wants, they have a lot of desires, they don't really care that much about you. In my experience, having grown up with a lot of cats, it's like cats are going to do what they're going to do. They don't, if they want something, they might be nice to you about it. But, I think somebody was asking me, like, why aren't the cats the bad guys in this story? And I was like, cats don't really have, to me, the like, evilness or gumption to be bad guys. Cats are just concerned with their own stuff. Like,
it's very hard to get cats to work together in a group to be evil. That would take a lot of valuable napping time.
Yeah, where it's like, ultimately, if like the world is in danger, cats might step in to help because that's where their stuff is. Yeah. They keep all their things on the world. So
the world is where the wet food comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. Without the world, there is none of those little cans with food in them. So that's important. But yeah, I don't see them as necessarily like. This is very much a story of order versus chaos. The gremlins represent sort of this chaos of constantly like doing things to turn people against each other and maybe blame people for doing things. Whereas like the dogs are down to help. They want everything to be cool. There's this sort of pact between them and humans that humans aren't implicitly aware of, but they understand nonetheless that like the deal is dogs will help with the gremlins and help us stay safe, and we feed them and care for them and scratch their bellies. That's the important stuff.
Fix the ear when it goes inside out. Yeah. That's part of the ancient bargain. I have to say, speaking of the Chaos Gremlins, I loved the character design on them. I thought they were adorable, weird little nasty bat things. A couple of the shots are just like, oh my god, it's so cute. I want to take it home.
Yeah, I feel like idea, though. The trick was like making them clearly gremlins, like things that what you think of when you think of gremlins, without them being like gremlins from the movie Gremlins.
Yes.
Just different enough and like their own thing, that they are believable for that, but also they are things that will just destroy for fun. That's what they live for.
Absolutely. There is a lot going on in the book in terms of Frankie figuring out where they fit in the world, and also dealing with bullies and with lost friendships, and also trying to help save the world from chaos gremlins. This is a lot to put on someone. Also, the discovery that the world is being secretly run by multiple dogs. They rise to the occasion magnificently, but was there, I suppose, what made you choose those particular trials? Okay, not the dog one, obviously that's the plot of the book, but like the bullying specifically and the losing of friends. We don't usually see too many books about loss of friendships and the kind of heartbreak that goes on there, like non-romantic friendship loss is a thing that just doesn't get handled much in books. I think it was great that it was in there. So what made you choose those?
I think the thing for me was I didn't want to make another like coming out story. So I feel like as a relatively straight white man, those stories are best left to the people who have experienced them, and for them to tell those sorts of stories. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have queer people in your stories. And so I think for Frankie, it was important to me that Frankie is dealing with this sort of post coming out life of like there's this person who was very important to them that is not part of their life in the same way anymore, and it was important to me as well to like sort of deal with this different idea of Dallas as a middle school bad guy bully. Because I think like there's a tendency to generalize about what types of people are bullies and how people bully, especially in middle grades and YA fiction. Whereas like my wife is a teacher and dealt with a lot of like kids who had a lot of privilege and had a lot of money and were well off, but were in a lot of the ways they were because despite all the things that they didn't have parents. Like they didn't have the support of their parents. They didn't have parents who were there when they needed them, parents who understood and cared about what they were going through. In Dallas's case, she has a mom who is very sort of judgmental and sort of protective of her reputation and doesn't want her hanging out with people like Frankie, and sort of puts that on her in a way that like causes her to have to choose between, her mom approving of her and her, being friends with this person that she is cared about. And it's very difficult, I think, as a kid to like not choose your parents.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I feel like I'd seen in real life and hadn't seen as much in stories. And the idea that like Dallas is inarguably a bully to Frankie in this story, but the idea that somebody at like 7th grade is already so far gone that they can't be saved is bad to me. It's a bad idea. So like this idea of how Dallas could realize this and come back from this and sort of figure out the way forward that for her and Frankie, because it's not. I make very clear in the story, and I want to make clear like it's not on the person who's being bullied to like save that friendship. It is up to the person who has done the wrong to like realize they're doing the wrong thing and to apologize and change the way they're acting. And it is still it's still up to that person that's been bullied to decide whether or not they care. They care that this person is doing better. Frankie still
was handled really well, I thought. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, Frankie still really sets boundaries on this. Like Dallas at one point asks for a hug, and Frankie's like, "No, we're not there yet. Like, I'm not ready for that." And I think that's hopefully that sets sort of a precedent for kids that are going through that sort of thing. They've read this and they say, "Oh no, I don't have to just forgive people. I don't have to tell people it's okay when they have done horrible things." It's on them to not be horrible.
Yes. No, there are important boundaries to be set, and books are really good for modeling that sort of thing. Lord knows. On the other hand, it is also a cool, fun adventure story about dogs. So I have to ask, do you have a dog?
I do now. I did not when I started this book because, like Frankie's mom, I'm allergic to dogs and not nearly as allergic to dogs as she is in this story. But my, as I said in the dedication, it's dedicated to my daughters who convinced me to get a dog, even though I'm allergic to dogs. And our dog, his name is Ace. He is the chillest dog who's ever born. He, just most days when I'm working in the house, when I'm writing, he'll go lay down somewhere. Occasionally he'll come check on me, get his scritches, get some cheese cubes or something, and then go back to laying down somewhere.
Is he any particular breed or?
Yes, several.
Yes.
Yeah, he's definitely a mutt. We got him from a rescue up in Raleigh, and he's I think he stood out to me when we went up there because my wife and my daughters and I went up there to this. It's basically a farm where they've got all these dogs you can adopt, and my daughters were out there, chucking things across the yard and making all the dogs run after them. And Ace was the one that sort of like walked up to me and continue to sort of back into my leg until I started scratching him. He'd slowly just turn that butt around and just push until you give him some positive attention. And I was like, yeah, this is a cool dog. I like this guy. So not any of the like hyperactive running around ones.
I have a hound myself who we've been looking for a dog, and this one was, despite having one functioning brain cell, she used it to just climb into my husband's lap and be like, hello, I am beautiful, pet me. And it has worked out great. We've had her for many years, but she also sleeps most of the time, occasionally gets up and demands food or to be admired and petted, and then goes back to sleep.
Yeah, I'm envious, really. That's the life right there.
I think having the one brain cell probably helps, though. I would get bored very quickly, whereas Hound appears to think that laying in a dog bed all day is a fabulous way to spend time. And, she's probably onto something. So you have definitely left this open for a sequel, and will there be more?
Yes, we are officially doing a trilogy. I'd like to do maybe even more than that, but this is sort of the story of Frankie that takes place over the course of a year. This one is all about the fall. The next one is more about the winter and spring, and then we have a final one that's about the summer. I've written them all, so they're Bree is halfway through drawing the second one right now. Hopefully, we should be seeing that about this time next year.
Fantastic. Well, I realize that it's hard to do a reading of comics. Would you like to do a reading? You can say, "Oh God, no!" That's a comic. It's very hard, and I will accept that.
You know what? I will deliver some of my favorite Yorkshire Terror dialogue, I think.
Excellent.
Because that's my guy right there, the Yorkie who thinks he's Batman. Just to give you an idea of what this sounds like in my head. All right. So they've just helped rescue Frankie from being attacked by a group of chaos creatures in this scene. Terror, who looks like that. He's a tiny Yorkie who actually has a mask built, a domino mask, into his fur there. He says, "Tell me, do you always decide to take walks in the dark when the moon is covered, or you just not have enough trials to face right now as it is?" Frankie says, I got this in my room. I think they're going after Dallas. They can't reach you, so they attack your vulnerable friends and family. Classic villain trick. So you ran off unprepared into the night to help your friend. You must be close. It's complicated. I can respect that. All friendships are complicated for me. I don't sit. I don't stay. And I only play dead to lure out my enemies. Did you actually fake your death? That's intense. That's justice! Yes. Terror is the dog of justice.
Well, that is awesome.
Thank you.
Before we open it up to questions, is there any question that you wish I had asked or something you would like to talk about with this book? Or
Now that's a question.
Anything you're dying to tell people about? Random fact? Did you do a lot of research for this book into like dog breeds or anything?
I did a very moderate amount of research into this one, and then the second one I ended up doing an extreme amount of research in, because as I was telling you before, the second one has a lot more like gallivanting around the world. So I was I think I was pretty nice to my artist in this one. And then the second one I was like, this scene is set in the Louvre. We're in this wing of the Louvre. There's this statue in the background. There's this going on here. And then as I'm watching them illustrate this, I'm like, oh, that was terrible. Why did I do that? And it's very specific. I want this statue. This is very important because dogs, blah, 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 blah. Because, yeah, I wanted to, like, in the second one, there's a lot of, like, this is a mythological character who's very closely associated with dogs for this reason or that. So, you know, there's a lot of like gallivanting around the world, but yeah, that's my story of like giving myself a lot of work to do, and then unintentionally giving my illustrator a ton of work to do. This one has like, I think like maybe like 1 or 2 references for, you know, what the dogs look like in each, you know, folder, and then the folder for the second one is just like, here are 20 pictures of the Louvre. Here's, you know, this very specific temple in India. So it's very like, I decided this one wasn't hard enough, I guess.
Did you learn any cool mythological dogs that were just particularly awesome, and you read it and was like, I got to put that in the book?
Yes. But they're in the second book, so you guys will have to get that one to see.
Well, now I'm curious. Now I have to wait a year to figure out what the teaser is for the cool mythological dog. So research, was it mostly just dog breeds and looking up various things, or?
Yeah, a lot of dog breeds. Some actual research on like fashion and clothing to some extent, which mostly I think shows up in the second book as well. But like I think, yeah, looking at the breed, sort of figuring out the mythology of it, and I think just sort of nailing down, you know, how I wanted each dog to feel, and make sure they were all different enough while still all being, you know, fun.
Does this mean you got to like sit in your office looking at videos of dogs and be like, I'm working.
Yes.
I'm looking at puppy videos. This is research.
Dog videos are a very important part of my research.
It's a hard life.
Very, very difficult.
Alrighty, well, does anybody have any questions? You have a fabulous author of many comics sitting here who I am sure would be, yes, all right.
What's your favorite cartoon?
My favorite cartoon, all time?
All time, yeah. Or give us a few.
It is hard back to front to beat Steven Universe. Like, Steven Universe has very few bad episodes, and has like a very like satisfying conclusion, and then Steven Universe Future manages to come somehow and like add another layer, and then also have like a satisfying conclusion again, which is like so hard to do. So I mean that one's really good. Owl House is really good, and that's another one that I think managed, despite all odds, and you know, despite Disney trying to make sure it happened otherwise, actually managed to like land the end of that.
There was an obstacle course to land to the end of that, but
yeah. I mean, obviously, the Avatars, Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. I think, you know, Last Airbender is pretty much perfect, but Legend of Korra is like a much higher level of difficulty, you know, and all the stuff that they added in that, and that they were like, we could just do Last Airbender again, but we're not going to. We're just gonna like make it so much more difficult and add so many more challenges that like we don't know how we're gonna, you know, fix. And so like I think both of those are really great. I think let's see. I mean, we got Amphibia, Gravity Falls, Over the Garden Wall. I still have only seen just a small portion of Adventure Time, but I know a lot of people love Adventure Time.
You should watch.
Yeah, it's
dog research.
There's so many. I think there's just so many one-offs in Adventure Time that it's just like, oh, I've gotten distracted and wandered off and done something else, and now I'm 40 episodes in and I've forgotten. Like, I think I could easily just like skip through stuff. My daughter is determined she wants to watch the entire series, but she's really only watching for Marceline and Bubblegum. Which I was like, we could look up like a watch guide where it's like, you got to watch these episodes. She's like, no, we have to see it all.
Have you seen Centaur World?
I have. Centaur World is one of my 6-year-old's favorite shows. That one is like, as an adult, getting into it is very difficult, but like
The first
once you're
2 or
there,
3 episodes, I was like, I don't know. Holy mackerel, yeah.
it was literally like my kids were sort of dragging me through it, and then there's an episode where the main character, Horse, gets backstory powers where they can just jump into people and learn their backstory, and I was like, that's the greatest storytelling device that's ever been created. I'm in now.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one too. I will springboard at that. Are there any comics you really love?
Tons. A lot of the ones that I normally recommend are much more adult rated. I have.
This really isn't the audience for Watchmen.
Well, I think more than enough people have proclaimed the greatness of Watchmen. I'm fine without adding to that pile of people. Mine is more like I have recently had the pleasure of writing Gwenpool in a story, so I had to reread all of the unbelievable Gwenpool, which for anybody who hasn't read any Gwenpool, a lot of people assume because of the name that she's just female Deadpool, which would make sense, but Gwenpool is the story of a girl who is a comics fan who gets pulled into the Marvel Universe from the real world, and so her power, at least for a large portion of this story, is just that she knows all about this stuff. She knows how comics work. She knows what people's secret identities are. Like, she's, just has continuity as her power. And then eventually she learns that she can actually exit the comic into the gutter space and see like the entire run of her comic, stretched out in front of her, so she can like jump between sections of her own story and things like that, which is a really like wild and inventive way to do all of this stuff that I just love. Also, like, I'm a sucker for Young Avengers. I'm always like a teenage superhero person, so those are always my favorites.
Cool. Do we have any more questions? Someone? Yes.
I was just curious, since you said you had a trilogy now for the Dark Knight, is there anything in the first book you wish you could go back and change because of, or did you map all 3 out?
Oh, I definitely didn't map all 3 out. I had sort of a very rough plan of what I wanted to do, and I think by the time I had finished 2, I had a pretty good idea of what 3 was going to look like. But I do think I had the benefit of the pandemic happening, which was like everything got massively delayed. So like I had already finished 1, and I got into writing 2 before there was any like final art on 1, and then I was like, by the time I was done with 2, I had a pretty good idea of where 3 was going to be, and had a chance to, if I needed to go back and fix anything, I really had plenty of space to do it. There weren't too many things that I felt like I needed to do that on, because it's all sort of my world, and I don't have to worry about too much other continuity, because like writing in a shared universe is a whole different horrible monster. But this one was very much like, I think the things that I realized about it are that like at one point in the second story I was like, oh, they're in Atlanta, and the mom is like, that's, I had to drive 7 hours to get here. And I was like, oh, I guess they live in Durham. I didn't really think about that, but I was like, Atlanta's 7 hours away, and I was like, from Durham, I guess. They live in Durham. They must live in Durham. But I didn't say where they live.
Theoretically, there are other places that are 7 hours
Sure.
from Atlanta.
They don't live in Florida. That's not. I mean, I guess they could live somewhere in Middle America somewhere, but They don't live in Florida. They don't live in South Carolina. only so many places from there.
I'm not complaining. I think that all of North Carolina authors should write books set in North Carolina, because if Stephen King can do it, so can we, damn it.
Yeah, I think in between the first and second volume of Dog Night, I actually wrote like a whole story, which I think will be out next year, which is a teen romance that does very explicitly take place in Durham. That like the original concept of it was like that, two people are moving from two different sides of the East Coast and end up in the same town, where they meet each other and get to know each other, and fall in love over a shared love of a manga. But like this was, I was like, well, what's halfway between, halfway up and down the coast is this place right here. So let's just set it in Durham. And I was like, and this scene takes place in the farmers market, and here's a bunch of pictures of the farmers market. This is what the park looks like in downtown Durham, and they definitely are going to a place that has great biscuits that, for copyright reasons, is not Mo Nuts, but is definitely Mo Nuts.
It does make research a lot easier if you can just step out into your back door or front door and take photos.
Well, that one is fun because my artist is Brazilian, so I had to be like, let me show you something that is very specific, but not anything like where you live.
But will there be cheer wine? Probably not for copyright.
Yeah, for copyright reasons, they are not drinking cheer wine, but it's a sort of cherry-flavored cola beverage.
As long as they have strong opinions about barbecue, then I think we've covered all the bases. Any other questions?
Did any other works inspire the story for Dog Night?
I feel like there's no way that it can't be true that other things have inspired it. I can't think of anything that has specifically leaned into it. It's a tough question. Is there anything that you feel like it felt like was inspired?
I mean, all I'm coming up with, and this is completely inaccurate, is Sailor Moon with dogs, but that's not it really, because then all the dogs would have to be individual dog nights, and. Yeah. But that is a brilliant idea, and someone should do that comic, just incidentally, so you can have,
dog transformation
sequences. Yes, you turn into the sparkly beagle or something and fight crime.
I'm into it. I'm into magical girl dogs. I feel like there's a market for it.
I'm sure there is.
TM.
Yes, I give that one to you freely. Because I don't want to have to draw that many girls or dogs.
I can't think of anything that's specifically did. I definitely feel like there's some inspiration, not even so much from the plot as so much as like the mood and the feeling and how things are resolved. I think from like maybe watching a little too much Steven Universe. It's just like not everything is resolved by like punching, and a lot of bad guys can be good guys under the right circumstances. So I think I think Steven Universe like definitely had a tonal inspiration on it, even if not in any way related to the actual story.
I'm sure the Yorkshire Terror would say that many problems can be resolved with punching, but
oh yeah, I mean, I guess Batman is an inspiration to the story. Definitely like Yorkshire Terror. I'm just like trying very hard to hit a spot right between like Christian Bale Batman and Darkwing Duck, because like Darkwing Duck is like. I grew up loving Darkwing Duck, but the thing I figured out about Darkwing Duck when I got older is the joke is that he's incompetent. He's bad at his job, and somehow manages to win anyway. And I didn't want that to be the case with Terror, other than the fact that he's tiny. Like he is not as big of a dog as he thinks he is, but he is capable of fighting evil and injustice at that level.
I mean, this is valid. You don't have to be huge to fight injustice. I did like that the largest dog, the Good Dane, is the kindness dog, and that's lovely.
He's a pacifist. He, you know, even as they're fighting gremlins, he's just like tossing them through a portal. You know, he's like, just move along, please.
I worked at a vet briefly in my youth as a receptionist, and we had a Great Dane come in who, it was like having a horse walk into the room. I was like, that is a lot of dog and all leg. And he was very sweet. It was the same thing, you know, not, he was probably very kind, and Fleur approved that. And the Yorkies all really are that, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a question there? All right.
When you said your dog's name was Ace, she wanted to know if it's named after Batman's dog.
Yeah, actually, it's sort of a coincidence, because we discovered that when we got the dog, we discovered that the name he had, which my wife didn't like, had been given to the dog by the shelter that he was at, and that the name that he had come in under was Four of Diamonds. And I was like, that's strange. I wonder why this dog would be named that. And so, you know, I sort of looked up where he came from, and it turned out that he had been seized with a lot of other dogs, about 50 dogs, and they had sort of, to keep track of them, they had given them all playing card denominations. And I was like, well, like he's not the Four of Diamonds. He's our Ace. You know, he's yeah, right. He's our only one. So I was like, you know, I give him that name. It's already the name of Batman's dog. You know, it's perfect. Felt like kismet there.
It makes perfect sense with the card things. I've been racking my brain going, did this dog come from Vegas? Where did you? But yeah, totally logical. Any other questions? Burning questions about dogs, about comics?
No questions about burning dogs, though.
Yes, no, don't do that. Well, I suppose you could have a dog that's like a phoenix, you know, the character, the canine torch, kind of.
That sounds very dangerous.
Yeah, just the tail wags and the whole
Just
place.
desperately wants to be pet, you know?
You're like, oh God, no, the terrible pain. All right, that is not a good idea for a dog superhero, and I can't believe they never really did, you know, the Human Torch's dog. He had Bat Dog and Super Dog and everything, but they never, probably wisely. Anyone, other questions? All right, I think we may be close to time, so thank you so much for coming out and talking to us about the dog night. Yay!
Thank you so much.
Oh, and